Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for West Side Story, the 2021 adaptation directed by Steven Spielberg. To describe the plot to West Side Story would feel like a gigantic waste of time because everyone knows this story. It's Romeo and Juliet set in 1950s New York. Instead of two rival families, you have two rival gangs, the Sharks and the Jets. The Sharks are Puerto Rican and the Jets are white. But one night at a dance that both the Sharks and the Jets are attending, Tony, the former founder of the Jets, and Maria, the sister of the Sharks leader Bernardo, meet each other, fall in love, and they start developing a relationship that could potentially cause a lot of problems for the rivalry between the Sharks and the Jets. So if you remember back in December of 2019, which felt like 200 years ago, we got the adaptation of Cats. Putting that awful movie aside, I have said many times over that I hate that original play. I saw it at the Pantages Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. Absolutely despised it. It's my least favorite musical of all time. But on the opposite side of that conversation, we have West Side Story, which is my favorite musical of all time. If I were to pick one, it's West Side Story. I actually managed to see West Side Story on Broadway during its 2009 revival run, and liked it a lot. But well before I ever saw West Side Story on Broadway, I was always a huge fan of the 1961 movie. I absolutely adore this version. I think it's just beautifully directed, the dancing scenes are amazing. Yes, it's got some problems, and most of them are very 60s problems when it comes to filmmaking, like brown face, and I will not defend those aspects. I know a lot of people dislike this original movie because of those certain elements, and I can't argue with them, but I just still adore this movie. It's in my top 40 of favorite movies of all time, and my favorite movie musical that's not a Disney film, period. Now, I have to admit, it's been about 7 years since I rewatched this movie from beginning to end, and I actually wanted to do a review for it in anticipation for this new adaptation, but unfortunately I just didn't have the time. One of the disadvantages of reviewing a Disney movie every week throughout the entire year. So I would love to talk about this movie in more detail, and that's a review that might be coming up in the future. I can't say any more beyond that. So when it comes to this new version directed by Steven Spielberg, I was skeptical on many levels because, one, I love that original movie so much, and just the idea of another version being out there just didn't really work for me. And plus, Steven Spielberg has the tendency to kinda butcher the endings to his more recent movies. I feel like every movie after Jurassic Park, whether they be good or not, the ending just seems like a misstep. So it's in those aspects I was skeptical, but at the same time I had to tell myself, look, this is his first musical. Spielberg has never done a movie like this before, so maybe it'll be like Tintin, where he's working in a genre that he's never touched before, and it'll force him to be at the top of his game. And also, putting Spielberg himself aside, I just had to keep telling myself, don't think of this as a remake of the 1961 movie. Think of it as an adaptation of the original play. And even if I were to look at this as a remake of that original movie, 60 years is a perfectly suitable time frame to remake a movie. And I really wish I had been able to see this movie earlier because, against all odds and despite every bit of skepticism that I had towards this version, not only is this one of the best movies of the year, but I actually like it better than the 1961 movie. Yeah, one of my favorite movies of all time, and Steven Spielberg managed to make a version that is superior in nearly every single way. One of the most obvious and welcoming changes that this movie makes is that Maria is no longer played by a white actress in brownface. She's played by Rachel Zegler in her feature film debut, and she is fantastic. As Maria, she gives a true Oscar-worthy performance. And I feel like she, along with one other person, helps carry this movie and makes it superior to the 1961 movie. Another great addition to this movie is Ariana DeBose as Anita. I would bet money right now that she is going to take home Best Supporting Actress because she is that good, and not just in terms of the musical numbers that she's a part of, but her overall performance is right up there with Rita Moreno from the 1961 film, who, by the way, is also in this movie as the owner of Docs. And Rita Moreno, for the small role that she's in, is really good. As far as I'm concerned, she's Hollywood royalty. And one thing that you'll notice about not only her performance, but that of Rachel Zegler, Ariana DeBose, and David Alvarez as Bernardo, is that there's a good amount of this movie where these characters are speaking Spanish, but no subtitles are accompanied with them. And that's something I actually really like. I think part of it has to do with the fact that people know this story inside out, so we kind of get the idea of what to expect. But for me, I feel like the main two reasons for this decision are that Spanish is a very easy language to understand. Even if you don't speak it, it's pretty easy to understand. And also, not having subtitles just lends itself to more of an authentic feel. And I think it just works a whole lot better without the subtitles. And speaking of the dance numbers, they are fantastic. For this being a genre that Steven Spielberg has never tapped into before, it's amazing. And I know that a lot of the credit for these scenes has to go to the actual dance choreographers, but the way Spielberg frames and shoots these sequences, it's like he's been doing it for decades. I mean, sure, one could say that the opening to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a musical, and sure it is, but the movie itself is not. So for him to nail a musical on his first try is very impressive, and a lot of the dance numbers are actually quite different from the 1961 movie. When the movie opens up, it's actually quite different compared to the original. And it's at that point where I realized this movie warrants its existence. Not to just correct the obvious brown face errors that the 1961 movie had, but a lot of these musical numbers feel different and are staged differently than the original. The opening is different, America is different, Officer Crumpkey is different. So it's not like The Lion King where it's a shot-for-shot remake and the movie's going, hey, you remember this iconic moment? West Side Story actually says, look, we're gonna do things differently, but stay true to that original play. And I just think the dance numbers here are absolutely spectacular. The second that America ended, I wanted to stand up from my seat and give it a standing ovation because I was that impressed. But I would be the only person in the theater doing that, so I didn't. Now let's talk about the romance, and unfortunately, in order for me to talk about the romance and the chemistry between Maria and Tony, I have to talk about the obvious elephant in the room, Ansel Elgort as Tony. Oh boy, let me just phrase it like this. He's been accused of sexual harassment from a lot of women, and I'm not going to turn a blind eye to him. I'm not even a big Ansel Elgort fan beyond the controversy. Like, I didn't like him in Baby Driver, and a lot of other stuff I've seen him in, he just never really impressed me. But that being said, I actually liked him as Tony. He's the weakest actor of the bunch. I'm going to say that right now. I wouldn't say he's miscast, but he definitely does not do as well of a job as a lot of the other actors do. And he had great chemistry with Rachel Zegler. I bought into the romance, and it's very faithful to the original Broadway production. So, I just like the romance. I mean, yes, Ansel Elgort outside of this movie I don't like at all. But I don't think it's really fair to just criticize him and drag the entire movie down solely because of him. Some people might, and I'm not going to stop them, but I felt like he did a decent job. So, despite that, I absolutely adore this movie. I was shocked that I loved this movie as much as I did, and even more shocked that I found it better than the 1961 movie. The dance choreography is amazing, the cinematography is gorgeous, all the actors do a really good job, again, with Rachel Zegler and Ariana DeBose being the two highlights. And when it comes to the ending, the thing that always leaves me an emotional wreck when I watch the 1961 movie, even if it's just in clip form, Spielberg nailed it. He stuck the landing And there was a point where I was so worried that he wasn't going to do it. I was so scared that I was going to walk out of West Side Story not feeling anything, but I did. And when I went to the bathroom right after the movie ended, I heard some guy next to me going... So, yeah, Spielberg nailed the ending to this. And because of that, I gotta say... Get off your ass and go see it right now. This really is one of the best movies of the year. It's in my top 3 so far. We got a few weeks left of 2021, but I feel like I really might have to make a top 15 list because this year was that good. And I really have to determine where West Side Story is going to land. So if you love musicals or you just love movies in general, I really encourage you to see West Side Story in a theater. I cannot stress that enough, especially considering that in a couple days there's going to be a huge juggernaut coming out that's going to take all the business away from everything. So if you could see West Side Story before that, please do. And there you go, that's my review for West Side Story. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? And please don't ask me if I'm going to readjust my top 100 list just because I think this new version is better than the 1961 movie. Because that's just going to be a huge headache in terms of how I rank it. So please don't ask me to do that. But whatever your thoughts are on this movie are, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for West Side Story. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day, and take care of yourselves.